Well, hello, everyone.
We are presenting around ultra-processed food-like substances. Some people call that ultra-processed food, but I want to just make sure it's like a food-like substance. And really, it's affecting mental health, physical health. And this has been really a very, very troubling topic for us to research recently. And because we've been shopping and looking at the labels and recognizing that there's really a major problem in terms of how we're eating. And so here's an opportunity. So there's not about guilt, it's about an opportunity to, empower yourself in a slightly better way. And again, we're not back to 100% pure, whole foods all the time. We are going to eat some processed foods. We just want to cut back on it. So I'm going to talk about the food industry and how this actually came to be. And then we're going to define it, which was the great question there, the health consequences and some of the science around why UPFs are so bad for us.
I like how we term the talk food-like substances, and that's because they mimic food. If they really look like food, some chocolate, for example, some mashed potatoes that kind of look like mashed potatoes. But what ends up happening, there's just food-like substance that is not food.
Yeah. And it's happened, and I'm not going to try to put a real blame on the food industry. They're an industry like so many other industries trying to maximize their profits, essentially. But when you bring in substances, chemicals from multiple sources, and you kind of combine them together, it's the cheapest way to kind of produce that supposed food. And the problem is that they're extracting components of different foods, and the extraction process by itself usually removes the healthy nutrients. And you want to be eating micronutrients, the minerals and vitamins, et cetera, there's dozens of those in each of those foods. So those are all being removed, and you're only getting kind of some of the kind of base elements. And so it's really unhealthy for that reason alone.
Yeah. And I guess, historically speaking, you're looking years and years ago when we started having ultra-processed foods, the idea behind it was to get the woman out of the kitchen.
Make it more convenient.
Make it more convenient, give the person free time to engage in a profession, in, being able to go to work, having more free time to spend with loved ones and family and so on. But what ended up happening, and have a look at this wonderful picture that you've selected there. You're talking about a place where something industrial is being created that is not food. If we were to see this, nobody would touch altered processed
probably
foods.
Wouldn't.
But most of those altered processed foods happen in buildings that have no windows, nobody wants you to see what's actually going on in there.
Yeah.
How do they happen?
And it's just not the production, and then it's the distribution and trying to create some consistency in the food. And so that requires preservatives as well, which is not good for us. So yes, they can produce cheaper food. And yes, there's incredible pressure, a lot of people around inflation and so on. And so some people are kind of forced into eating this kind of cheaper supposed food. And then the other one is, so it's like create a cheap product, but also you want to maximize your profits. And how do you do that? You make foods essentially addictive, right? That taste so good or so appealing that people want to eat it. And usually that's the combination of salt, sugar, and fat. And one of the keystones of ultra-processed foods is it's soft, so it's easy to chew and swallow. It's like it goes down quickly, and it's also energy dense. Right. And so
end up eating double the calories that you would eat otherwise if you just ate normal food.
So for instance, almost all of the grocery store breads are ultra processed because they're soft, as opposed to a very chewy kind of sourdough bread made from basic ingredients. It's harder to chew, harder to eat, et cetera, et cetera. Now we happen to like that now because we know we're eating healthy stuff.
And usually eat a slice of, real bread, real sourdough, and you're done.
Yeah.
But you go to the grocery store and you buy that altered process bread, looks like bread, is food-like substance, but it's not food.
Yeah.
And you want to eat and eat and eat and eat because the satiety levels are now messed up.
Yeah.
Right. So your brain doesn't know when you had enough.
Right.
There's not enough information.
It got into the system too quickly.
Right.
Is it? And essentially, the products that sell the most are the ones that continue to be produced by the industry, right? And so overeating is actually their goal because they want to maximize their products. The other thing is the food industry is very good at trying to, low in this or high in that. As soon as you see that type of claim on a food label, you should be very aware, because really food is so complex. The micronutrients have to combine with other micronutrients that it's, just like high in calcium, low in, fats and all those things. It just doesn't make sense. These kind of components of food, or the macronutrients like proteins, fats, carbohydrates, those are very gross breakdown divisions of food, when in fact it has to be micronutrients from multiple from healthy whole foods. So what's happened over the last 50 years is there's been iterative process of food design. So you got the best of the scientists creating the foods, they test it against humans, they get focus groups, they take it into the market. I'm just going to turn off the phone there. See how the market share goes, and then they kind of repeat the process, right? And so they're trying to maximize their profits. And we're now, our society and what our food is being offered is a product of that iteration. It's essentially an industry driven by profit. So I'm pointing to a video that I found by Mario Kratz, and you can kind of find this on the internet as well. And he really takes it, slowly through the explanation.
Step by step,
Yeah.
really explaining what happens with those ultra processed foods. How do they destroy the epithelium? How does that raises inflammation? Why is that really an issue? Not just because we double the amount that we would eat otherwise if we intake real foods, but really talking about what's the relationship between this increased inflammation, cancer, or chronic diseases, heart inflammation, how do they happen? And then he really breaks that down.
Yeah,
right?
He's very, very good. This is
Very
the NOVA classification. So this is a very interesting story of a Brazilian scientist, Guerrero, who knew that in the early 90s, there was hardly any obesity in Brazil. And then there was a sudden epidemic. Like there's a lot of people putting a lot of weight. People were eating the same types of food, but the ultra processed industry had kind of taken over that point. And so the percentage of ultra foods has gone up. And he kind of measured the difference between ultra processed foods and weight, and kind of saw that correlation. So he was the one who kind of came up with this classification. So we're trying to recommend unprocessed or minimally processed foods, and nothing inherently wrong with processing. We've been processing for tens of thousands of years,
when
right?
we cook, we process, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So you're cooking, you're grinding, you're drying, you're freezing. So those are kind of the healthy type of processing, but we're essentially trying to endorse whole foods, right? Refrigerated, frozen, etc. And then level 2 was kind of the oil, sugar, butter, and salt. Again, that's healthy stuff. There's really nothing wrong with that. And then there are some kind of healthier processes like canned vegetables, fruit, etc., some fermentation. But you're usually seeing 2 or 3 ingredients on the ingredients list, right? And then there's a whole separate category now.
Then which is this
ultra processed foods, and we're going to give you a lot more definitions, but you're essentially extracting substances from whole foods and kind of recombining them together. And then they're usually high in sugar. Watch out for the sugar, salt, vegetables, oil, and additives. So I'm just going to give you a lot more examples of that one. So Mario explains all the types of chemicals that are added to our foods, and a lot of those foods are also processed themselves.
And let's just stop here for a second, Rob. What are some of those? I mean, look at them: hydrogenated oils,
right?
Artificial emulsifiers.
I'll tell you about emulsifiers. So it essentially brings the fat and water together, so it makes it soft. The problem is that same process happens on the lining of your gut. You're kind of probably shearing off some of the surface area of your gut, and that can cause inflammation.
Right. I mean, we use emulsifiers in detergent to wash the clothes, right? So that the fat in your clothing can be taken out.
It's doing the same thing.
Right. So it's the same thing. So definitely that kills your epithelium, destroys some of the lining of
Right.
your gut, of
Causing some
your,
inflammation.
and
yeah.
that causes inflammation. And of course,
Right.
what you want to do, what we want to do is to keep inflammation low,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Because high inflammation
So a
leads
lot
to
less.
a
Yeah.
plethora of chronic conditions, including cancers.
Yeah.
We don't want that.
Yeah. And we're not trying to, I mean, you want to reduce your ultra processed foods. You're not going to eliminate it, really, I don't think. But you should read on the labels. If it reads artificial flavors, you should read that as chemicals. Natural flavors, read that as chemicals. Like those are not foods, right? Modified starch, like taking the corn oil and the different oils, palm oils, are all like extracting the oil part, and you're losing out on the micronutrient. So I like this diagram because this kind of breaking it down into micronutrients and percentage of daily needs, vitamin C, calcium, iron, that's not how nutrition works. That's a simplified version of nutrition. What we want to do is look on the bottom half of the screen and to be able to recognize there's all sorts of chemicals, enzymes, preservatives, artificial flavors. Those are all code words to say processed foods. And even something that's high in sugar, if it's like number 2 or number 3 on the list, the sugar, you can likely know that the food itself is highly processed as well. So generally speaking, as Gabriela said, so using extracts, it's chemicals, emulsifiers, preservatives, essentially substances within the food that you wouldn't have in your kitchen, right? You wouldn't have in your spices. You can't.
So you open the pantry, if you can't find that product that you read on your label, chances are that's altered processed food,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So
those names that we can barely pronounce.
Supermarket brand.
What's anti-caking? That was on a couple of slides back.
Well, I guess it somehow stops the food from clumping, for instance, but I'm not sure. I'm not an expert, but just to let you know that that's part
because
of
think about it's an industrial process, right? So they have to make this food-like substance act, smell, and look like actual food. So we're talking industrial production of something that is artificial, is not food.
Yeah.
Is a food-like substance. How can we combine them so that it looks like, it feels like, it has the texture, it
Right.
has the taste, the smell,
or that we like it even
and
better.
that we like it.
So breakfast cereals, yogurt. I mean, we bought a yogurt that had 2 ingredients in it, right? So it was like milk and bacteria, different types of bacteria. So, it's out there. There are healthy yogurts, energy bars, foods that are wrapped in plastic. And we're thinking about like your TV foods or frozen lasagna or frozen pizza, those type of foods are almost certainly ultra processed. Canada is actually one of the 5 or 7 countries that's actually kind of on the edge of trying to push these guidelines. Ice cream.
Which guidelines?
The guidelines are on what is an ultra processed food. And so this is, I've taken a picture from one of our favorite big box stores. Ice cream is just like filled with different types of ultra processed foods as well. But muffins, cakes, French fries, the frozen stuff. And I'm going to blow up this picture here. This is too good. So it's the same picture. And so then you read through the natural flavor, cellulose, gum, the gums, the monodiglycerides, it's like there's a lot of stuff there that's trying to make this ice cream last.
Carrageenan.
And then at the end
what
of it,
is carrageenan?
Exactly. At the end
where do I buy carrageenan? And what
store.
does carrageenan do to my food and my body?
Yes, we don't know. That's the other part, but contains bioengineered food ingredients. Well, hats off to the big box store for actually admitting it's a bioengineered food, but then at the same time, great quality, great price guaranteed. Ouch. Anyways, yeah. The issue is the percentage of food that we're getting as a percentage of our caloric intake is increasing with time. So in the US, Canada, the UK is probably 60-ish%. And then what's really concerning, and part of the reason we present this is that we're hoping that you can have an influence within your family, your network, your friends, right? To kind of bring to consciousness this, that they
because is this not, and I feel we can still do a better job at really explaining why is this such an issue. when I eat food, I have all those micronutrients that my body needs in order to thrive, to help me think better, think more clearly,
Mhm.
feel better, act appropriately, and just have a good quality of life. When I eat altered processed foods, they go through my body. All that I get is increased number of calories, but no micronutrients,
yeah.
no food, no
That's the
food
empty
for
calories.
what I need in order to
Or
be able
or
to
fewer. Exactly.
fuel.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
so this is the issue, and that increases inflammation, and that causes all sorts of plethora
Yeah.
of medical conditions.
And
And you
we- yeah,
imagine
Yeah.
what happens to our body when we do this kind of abuse over and over and over again. No wonder why we have such high, percentages of
Mental health issues. Yeah.
and bowel syndrome and
Yes.
colon issues
Yes.
and
Yeah.
digestive issues,
Yeah.
liver related issues, because there is a system that has been put at enormous amount of stress over prolonged periods of time.
Yeah, and we don't
right?
really actually know for certain, ingesting those chemicals. All we can say is associations. I did have to know it's quite a troubling picture, right? It was like diet and screen time is like kind of mindless eating is kind of what I'm thinking here. And there is an
It is,
association
yeah.
in kids,
Yeah, yeah.
anxiety, depression.
Oh goodness, yes. There's
Obesity,
not a
diabetes.
doubt in that. I mean, Rob, the science is very clear. We are attracted to those products. What's worse is that imagine a person that is addictive to something, say smoking or drinking. How easy or how difficult do you think it is for me if I bump in less than 200 meters, I bump into lots of sources where I could have those things that I'm trying to stay away from because I'm addicted to. Right? Coca-Cola, for example, we know it's bad for us. It's filled with altered process. It's an altered
it's sugar water,
like substance,
Yeah.
right? It's available everywhere.
Yeah.
Those chips, for example, those snacks, the McDonald's food that has to be produced in masses, has to look the same, taste the same, feel the same.
Yeah.
It's industrial based, it's industrially made.
This is
and
the
increases
issue.
our inflammation.
So we can't say it's causative, even though we believe that, but there's definitely association,
Mhm.
right? Higher intake of ultra processed foods, poor mental health, increased incidence of cancer. I'm about to show you a study on that. Definitely obesity, diabetes. We, as we're getting older, hopefully you're cured of your cancer, we can run into issues around neurodegenerative disease, many other medical conditions.
And Rob-
Arthritis.
And Rob, just
irritable bowel.
to stay here on this slide for a second, think of blue zones, the blue zones of the world, right? Those are the zones where people live the longest. Okay. And so we've done a lot of research on that. What in the world are these people doing that the rest of us are not doing? And lo and behold, one of the things that they're doing is they actually grow food and they eat food and they cook. Whoa, imagine that. They actually know what they're putting in the food that they are intaking. And a lot of them are doing that. And as I said, there is historically a story here. There's a narrative. Years ago, we decided to come up with a solution to easy the burden of a woman, especially when you have many kids and a large family, of being stuck in the kitchen and cooking all day. So that there's a positive there. We want to help, but what we ended up doing is now we live in a society where most people don't cook foods. In fact, they don't even know how to cook a meal. Right? So no wonder why we're having those problems. But there are still those blue zones in the world where people live the longest. And one of the things that, well, actually, a lot of the science that comes from there matches exactly the directives of the Cancer PEP program.
Right, yeah.
That means eat food, not chemical, mostly plants, not too much, exercise, have good relationships, recognize yourself in others, be kind, be gentle, be grateful, act with integrity, form a community of like-minded
and we'll talk about that during inflammation as well. Yeah. So this was actually just published earlier this year in a 2013 study. Yeah, 2023 study. And so it's a large UK study published by Chang and team.
Perspective analysis.
And I just look at that, 197,000 people followed, originally from 2009, 2013. Essentially did a dietary intake. So that would, now it's interesting, only 22.9% of their food at that point was through ultra processed food, like the caloric intake. It's much higher than that now. And they are filed for 10 years. And there was an association. Yes, it was small, like 0.02. But you know, that it went up 1.02 for each 10% increase over that 20% essentially. So the more you eat, the higher your chance of getting cancer. So this is actually the more disturbing study. So this was from 3 years ago. Kevin Hall from NIH essentially took 20 overweight adults and kept them indoors and monitored them very, very closely for 28 days. And they were randomly assigned to either a healthy diet for the first 2 weeks or the ultra processed food like substance diet for 2 weeks. And at the end 2-week point, they crossed over. So they each got the other diet, and then they were monitored very closely. Now, interestingly, they try to make the diets very comparable. Like, for instance, if they offered
burgers.
Well, no, I was like, I'm just going to give you an example of like a blueberry muffin, for instance. So you can have an ultra processed blueberry muffin, or you can actually have one that's healthy. And so they would offer, you know, the healthy one to the healthy diet and the unhealthy one to UPF diet. And they balance the diet in terms of calories, fats, salts, even had to add some fiber to the UPF diet just to try to make it very compatible. So it wasn't just like hamburgers and French fries on one side and lettuce and celery on the other side. It was
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
it would be
they received the same products,
Yeah.
only that in one group they were altered processed foods, so they were
Yeah.
food-like substances. In the other room, they actually got the actual food with the
I mean, and it was
with the
some difference as
compounds
well.
and
For
the
instance,
micronutrients.
maybe yogurt with nuts and fruit.
Right.
And they had to add a little bit more fruit in order to make the sugar content the same as two sides. So they were matched very closely, macronutrients and so on. Interestingly, so both groups said on average they felt full, they felt satisfied, and the people could eat as much or as little as they wanted at each meal. So, but it was measured as to how much they were actually eating. So their food enjoyment was essentially the same between the two groups.
Right.
The UPF group ate 500 kcals more per day, like 24 versus 29. The UPF group on average, this is over like 2-week period, gained 2 pounds, whereas the healthy group actually lost 2 pounds. That's over a 2-week period. A pound a week is a big change there. Why was there a reason for a difference in the weight gain? Probably, as we were saying before, a UPF, soft, calorie-dense food gets into your system. You're eating it faster than your body can actually recognize that you got calories in the system. There may be other reasons why the chemicals kind of interfere with the appetite center. And lastly, just before we finish off there, is just this whole idea of the microbiome, right? So we don't know, one, they can cause the sloughing of some of the cells and inflammation from your bowel, et cetera. It just doesn't get very far in your system. It lacks the fiber, which is actually critical. And you just can't add fiber. Like just an ultra processed fiber is not the same thing as taking a fiber from a whole food. It's totally different. Now, the takeaway for each and every one of you is if you actually decrease your UPF intake, you will allow your microbiome, the bacteria in your gut, to actually recover. So you can recover at any point.
That's why we talk about a lot in the Cancer PEP program about probiotics, things like cabbage, kombucha, kimchi, right?
And natural fibers too, right? Yeah.
Yes, of course.
grow
Things
bacteria.
like flax seeds and chia and the hemp hearts and so on. Your vegetables, your fruits. They can really replenish that layer that otherwise is being stripped by altered processed foods. Can take a look, can strip the mucosa. I mean, that's terrible stuff. Imagine, operating on a gut that is severely affected, that has no protective wall, basically.
Yeah. Okay. So, I think I was really happy because we didn't have all this information when we actually did the Cancer PEP program, but we were saying the same things, is like, eat from the perimeter of the store, right? Because that's where where fruits and vegetables are. Read your labels.
Yes. So shop the perimeter. That's, you go in the grocery store, that's where most of the fruits and vegetables are.
Yeah.
On the perimeter, outside the walls of the store,
Yeah, yeah.
not the inside of the
Yeah,
store.
exactly.
Right.
Definitely want to read the labels and kind of educate yourself around this. Certainly be aware of the health claims. Usually, if it has a health claim, it's usually an ultra processed food. There's no one extract like they make these claims like high in fiber, high
Mhm.
in whatever. Other than vitamin D, B12, you're probably that's just like a false claim. It just doesn't work that way. Whole foods have dozens, if not hundreds, of those micronutrients that work together in harmony that we don't even understand at this point in time. So you want to cook at home,
Cook at home.
choose
Yes.
whole foods.
You're looking at those, chocolate chip cookies in the store that are filled with ultra processed ingredients.
Yeah.
Leave them behind, buy
Yeah.
some ingredients, cook it. Bring your friends, say, you know what, guys, it's Saturday. We're not gonna just drink and play cards. We're gonna cook a meal. Imagine that.
Nice.
We're gonna sit around the table and we're gonna laugh our guts out trying to make this meal together.
Yeah. Eat
Yeah.
food, mostly plants, not too much.
Janor Papa, you're moving too fast. Reduce fast foods. I think that's a very important one. Choose a healthy breakfast, eat food, mostly plants. I put some more here in the bottom. Limit sugary beverages.
Yeah.
Snack smart. Prepare your meals. And I noticed on Facebook that, we have every Monday we say, tell us a highlight of your week or something that you learned the previous week. And one of the Cancer Peppers said, I prepare my meals. I prepare all the ingredients and it feels really good to have everything that I need handy. Educate yourself because that's what's going to be the impetus behind making any changes. If you know, then you're going to be a little more careful when your body gives you signals that you're fatigued, that you're not clearly thinking, that, you can't bring yourself up to speed to enjoy life, but you seem to be a little depressed, a little negative, or there's something that's just you're not feeling right. Well, look at, in addition to relationships and emotions and stress levels, right? Look at what am I eating? What are possible causes of how I feel? Practice moderation, experiment with whole food recipes.
Nice.
Seek support, right?
Yep. There it is.
Okay.
Support, baby.